Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
No one is suggesting that your warp program be dismantled. Only that Starfleet proceed with more restraint.
Get Lieutenant Tucker in here. Ask any engineer on the project. They'll tell you this ship can fly. Archer and I just proved it. We're ready to go. Now.
That's not your decision to make.
With all due respect, it's not yours either. You're right, sir. We were reckless. We knew there'd be consequences. We knew we'd probably be thrown out of Starfleet.
You may have been right.
AG and I may never fly again. But it's a small sacrifice to make if it keeps this project going. We didn't build this engine to make test runs around Jupiter. We built it to explore. If my father were alive today, he'd be standing here asking, what the hell are we waiting for?
I think we've got the things we need. The core business has been attended to.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I got myself a little worked up. I apologize.
I noticed.
Okay, I'm going to push the button.
All right. Buttons pushed.
Buttons pushed, that makes the clock go. And
The clock goes go.
So, yeah.
Do the show.
Yeah, so, okay. So we can start the podcast now.
Okay.
Are you cool?
I'm cool.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Hello.
Hello. This is so awkward for some reason.
Well, the reason is that Jesse's still not here.
Right.
That's why it's awkward. Dan and I are awkward with each other when Jesse's not here.
Yeah, and I mean, like as promised, we're right here on the couch, snuggling up, doing the podcast.
doing the podcast, which is a new dance. It's a new dance the kids are all into.
We're in blankets. We're all like snuggled next to each other with some hot cocoa. Don't you remember? You promised that's what we would do last week.
I did.
You said if Jesse's not here for a third week straight, we would snuggle up on the couch and do the
that.
podcast.
Well, it's because he was unexpectedly not here.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, do you remember you talked about doing the podcast? Do you remember back in the day when people were talking about doing the butt?
Yes.
And it was like doing the butt, Dana.
Sexy.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. Do you remember when people used to go, it's electric, boogie woogie?
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
That made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was weird.
But doing the butt, I was down for.
Yeah, I'm down with doing the butt.
But you're right. I forgot about the hot chocolate and the snuggling on the couch.
Yeah.
Maybe next week we can all three of us do that together. Yeah.
We can all three of us.
Because Jesse's not here this week. We expected him here this week because in America you only get 2 weeks of paternity leave.
Right.
So he was required to come back to the podcast.
But then he came up with a new excuse.
He got a cold. Can you believe it?
He got a cold.
Can you believe it? A middle-aged man with young children got a cold? From how? From how did he do that? I don't know.
From how?
But regardless.
Wherefore art thou cold?
Regardless, we're good to go.
Wherefore art thou cold, Jesse?
Yes, we are good to go on the old It's Got Star Trek podcast. Yes, that's the one you're listening to.
Here we go again.
But you knew that full well. Welcome, I should say. Part of our format is to say welcome. Welcome to the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Another part of the format is to mention the number of the episode, just so it's clear in case you need to reference it sometime in the future.
The most important thing to me is that we succeed.
Or if you'd like to tell a friend. This is episode number 274
Acknowledged.
of the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
Acknowledged.
Good. I'm glad.
Acknowledged.
Acknowledged.
Excellent.
Did you notice they both said that? There's one more thing they both said.
Not on your life.
Not on your life.
Oh, you're talking about A.G. Robinson and Jonathan Archer?
Yeah, he goes,
Not on your life.
Not on your life.
Acknowledged.
Acknowledged.
Isn't that cool? They say the same
That
thing.
Isn't
that cool?
I sincerely think that is cool.
Actually, I don't know if cool is the right word.
No, no. Go with your first instinct.
It was repetitious is
Go
what
with
it
your
is.
first instinct here, Dan. Cool is exactly the right adjective for that little observation, that audio observation that you've provided.
Optimism.
Optimism.
All right. That's sort of less.
That's less cool.
That's less interesting. Let's say.
Not on your life.
Not on your life.
Acknowledged.
Acknowledged.
Because the mirroring
Yeah.
that goes on in this story that we're about to discuss is interesting.
I agree.
Good. But first, you speak of acknowledging, and we must acknowledge that we made an error.
It appears so.
Not in any of our discussion points or facts over the previous 273 episodes. No errors there. Not at all. Rather, we made an error.
Observation.
We made an error in forgetting to do a haiku for a review because
If it exists.
listeners may recall that we a while back developed a policy in which for each review that we were made aware of on a podcasting site, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, what have you, that Dan would write a bespoke, that is to say, custom haiku.
It was utterly reckless, irresponsible, and maybe even criminal.
Yes. You're right. That initial idea may have been all those things, but
That's right.
But that is no excuse for the fact that we received a review. We knew we received a review, and we intended to write a haiku. But I believe it was in one of those times there was some travel involved or something. Something, I don't know. We forgot about it. Long story short, we forgot about it.
Doesn't really matter now.
But that forgetfulness was indeed temporary, as it turned out, because something reminded us that we forgot about it. So then
It wouldn't have made a damn bit of difference.
we unforgot about it. And now we can present to you both the review and the subsequent haiku.
All right. Well, here is the review, and I apologize to this person. I'm still skeptical about the authenticity
It's not me.
of this
Dan
review.
is convinced this review was written by me. I assured Dan quite sincerely it is not. And furthermore, I neither have the knowledge nor inclination to try to game the review system with fraudulent reviews. I
Okay.
prefer to game it by bribing listeners with interactive activities.
Fascinating.
Okay, I was like, is this just going to be a musical sting? Is this a new thing Dan's doing?
I'm going to speak through music and sounds.
By
instead
the
of
way,
words.
hey, that might be fun.
Yeah, maybe could be. One episode, I won't do any of the word. I won't extract any words. Just sound effects and tunes, and that's how I'll respond the whole episode.
That would be a fun challenge.
Yeah, it would be indeed be a challenge. Okay, so are we actually reading the review too?
Yes. I mean,
Before we do the haiku?
I think in this case it makes sense to read the review because the haiku, if I recall correctly, the haiku requires the review for context.
Well, the haiku is based upon the username, but the review can play into it. But first and foremost, it's about the username.
Gotcha. And the username for the review is part of the reason you're convinced that I wrote the review, even though I did not write the review.
Okay, I'm forced to believe you.
And I recognize that some portion of the audience is going to think, oh, Patrick did write this review. I didn't. I promise you I didn't. I swear on a stack of Spocks.
Okay, so I'm going to read the review. It says, amazing interaction between the hosts. The sound effect usage is fun, but sometimes over the top. I rarely learn new things about Star Trek, but enjoy hearing their discussion about it. I cannot wait to hear my haiku. And that's by the user, Is Dan Pooh.
I am so delighted that somebody out there was like, you know what? I'm gonna game this system because this person clearly understands the fact that Dan, for reasons that are not entirely known to us, decided early on that his haikus would all be somehow based off of the person's username.
Sherlock Holmes has nothing on you.
And so, knowing this, they chose a purposefully comical username.
It wasn't an easy decision.
Is Dan Pooh. All right, go for it, Dan.
So, right. So that was by Is Dan Pooh. And then here's the haiku
right.
based upon the username, but also the review can come into play as well.
Okay.
Is the sound too much? Dan thinks not, but don't forget, Pooh is what he is.
So you've, in addition to composing a haiku, that is relevant to the review. You are responding to the review.
Yeah, that's what makes it extra clever.
That is. You are defending your sound clip playing.
While also sort of acquiescing to his
assertion or suggestion? No, it's a question.
I was acquiescing to a suggestion that I might be
It was an accu-question.
Accu-question.
Yeah.
It's
Is
like
Dan
accu-weather. Accu-question.
Yeah.
It's the accu-question.
Well, that's
meter.
very nice. I enjoyed that haiku, Dan. I hope Is Dan Pooh also enjoyed that haiku.
Is the sound too much? Dan thinks not, but don't forget. Pooh is what he is.
All right.
One more time.
So, thank you.
That's enough!
Thank you, Is Dan Pooh. Now you've got your haiku.
And I apologize immensely for making you wait. Because I felt guilty because even in the message, it's like, I cannot wait. Because it didn't say
wait.
And then let me double check here. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not I can't wait. It's I cannot wait.
That's serious. That's for real.
They're emphasizing it.
Yeah. Well, and that goes for anybody else out there too. If you write a review, we'll give you a haiku.
Yeah.
Unless in the review you explicitly ask us not to give you a haiku. Understood? Got it. Good. Okay. Next up, before we get to, and we haven't even mentioned, we are talking about First Flight. Dan played a bunch of sound clips, but we're talking about First Flight from Star Trek Enterprise. But right before we can get to our conversation of First Flight, we do have some contact-em-ups.
I bet you're going to tell me.
First, this is a letter, an email, not a letter. It's a letter transmitted via email about something Dan said last week. Yes, you, Dan. You're Dan. I'm Patrick, you're Dan.
Yeah.
Jesse's not here tonight.
I agree.
Hello, Jam Munchers.
It appears so.
Sorry.
This is from Isaac, by the way.
Yeah, I got it from that.
Hello, Jam Munchers. Firstly, big congrats to Jesse. I was wondering if he could sneak a Trek-related middle name for his latest kid. Yes, the middle name is actually Gul Dukat. we were all puzzled by that. We're like, really? Jesse's like, I like gulls.
You did have a point.
Yeah. Anyway, to continue. Last week, Uncle Danny Longclips asked if built like a brick shithouse is a known saying. Baby, you're talking Aussie.
Oh, wow.
This saying can be used to describe someone as both tall and muscular, the opposite to a Trek nerd. Nerds. Have you ever heard the saying, I'm not here to fuck spiders?
Well, we had a discussion about this a few podcasts back.
Did we? About the fucking spiders?
Yeah, actually many podcasts ago, because I was saying like...
Many podcasts ago.
We got into a big argument about something, it was an argument...
When have you and I ever got in an argument?
I know. It was something about fuck spiders, and I said something that I felt was similar to saying fuck spiders, but I made up my own thing, and you were like, that's not like that at all. I gotta find this episode now, because I vividly remember it except for like the details. Can you vividly remember something except for the details?
Dan, I'm not sure.
I know it happened. I remember you were talking like, no, that's nothing like his fuck spiders. And I was like, yes, it is, because blah, blah, blah. And,
Well,
anyways, this is just to say that, yes, I do. I've heard this, but only because of Isaac.
Yeah. Well, okay. And Isaac concludes his email by saying, holograms, where would I stay? Chief O'Brien, Isaac of Trek 365. And yes, another reminder, check out the new podcast, Trek 365, a new 365-second podcast released every single day of 2025.
Holograms? Where would I stay?
Oh, and by the way,
Chief O'Brien?
Isaac's information about being built like a brick shithouse, being a familiar phrase in Australia as well, has been independently corroborated by longtime fan and supporter Emmanuel Croft on Facebook, who said, by the way, Australian here, we definitely use built like a brick shithouse.
Okay, I hit a button there.
Wait, you hit a button? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, not a literal button.
I thought you were explaining to me some sort of error, a podcast error that I'd then have to edit out.
Oh, no.
I thought you were saying, I hit a button there.
No, I meant like...
I thought you wanted me to do a retake.
No, I twiddled an Australian button.
Yeah, well, yes. And Emmanuel Croft goes on to say, I actually thought it was an exclusively Aussie saying.
It might be.
Like busier than a one-armed bricklayer in Baghdad, or as useful as tits on a bull.
Well, I've heard that one before.
I've heard the tits on a bull one before. The one-armed bricklayer in Baghdad, I looked up and everything online does seem to indicate that is at least originates in Australia.
I would never assert that, what was the phrase I said? I just totally
build
blanked.
like
I think that's the closest to meditating I've ever got. I just went blank.
Oh, is that what we're going to call this? Is that what I should tell the doctor?
I was briefly meditating.
He come down with back case of meditation.
Yeah, I mean, like, I there was nothing in my head.
Yeah.
I can pass the time by meditating.
Built like a brick shithouse. I would never argue that did not come from Australia. In other words, I don't know where I heard it. It very well could have been like from that.
Good.
So,
all right.
Anyway, so the answer is a lot of people have heard
So
of it.
thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Thanks, Agamus!
And all of our other friends down under. For the rest of you in the world, if you'd like to send us an email, you can send it to feedback@itsgotstartrek.com. You can, of course, find us on all the social media at It's Got Star Trek. Or send us a voicemail. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? It'd be fun. You can record a voicemail at itsgotstartrek.com/record. All right. So,
Thanks, Ruby.
We should also remind ourselves, though, that there was that one person that wrote an email when I asserted that you can't lead with two people, you can lead with one.
Yeah, that
or
was
three
Joe
or more.
Shorter the fourth.
Well, I'm just recapping what I said. I was saying, so everyone else knows what we're talking about. So
Okay.
we're not having
No,
an
you're
inside
right.
talk.
You're right.
So
we got an email from Joe Shorter the fourth.
I'm explaining it.
Okay. Dan will explain. I apologize. I was trying to be helpful, and it was not in a helpful way.
I appreciate
and
it.
I understand that.
This is good timing, Admiral.
I asserted that you can only lead by either one person can lead or a committee of people can lead, but two people leading
Like an odd number committee. The implication was an odd number.
Well, okay.
You didn't. To be fair, you're right. You didn't say odd number, but I kind of took that as the implication.
The point that I was specifically making was more that two people can't lead.
Got it.
And this person wrote an email saying, "Au contraire, mon frère."
Yeah.
Something about ancient Rome or something.
Yeah, the Roman consul.
And so the reason I bring this up again is because we were going to talk and confer with Jesse and see what he has to say about it. And
he ain't here.
He ain't here. So I have to remind us so we don't forget.
You're right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So Joe Shorter the fourth.
Yeah.
They call him fourth. Fourth. Because Trip Tucker, triples.
It appears so.
Trip Tucker the third. He calls himself Trip because of triples, but why doesn't he call
Because
himself?
triples is best.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. Why doesn't he call himself Trey? Isn't that another one?
It is, but he's apparently not chosen that one. Just like Bill versus Will. Yeah. Or Dan versus Daniel, for that matter. All right. Okay, let's get to the episode. First Flight, which of course evokes things like the first flight of the Wright brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought there might be a sound clip coming.
Oh, no, I was just,
I mean, you don't have...
Fascinating.
It wouldn't have made a damn bit of difference.
You don't need to patronize me.
Have a little faith, Deval.
All right.
it was this episode didn't have a lot of positive, because one of my organization sorting criteria is I go from most positive to least positive.
For the sound clips, you mean?
It's not in a strict linear order, but that's kind of how I tend to make it go from left to right, up to down, positive.
So positive. How do you mean positive?
So like yes is the most positive. Okay. No is the least positive. In the middle, you'll have something like, you're a special guy. That's kind of positive. Or you might have something like, say, you're a stupid jerk face. That's less positive. And so it's on an arbitrary scale determined in my head at the time I'm doing it.
Gotcha.
There weren't a lot of positive things going on in this episode.
A lot of negatives?
There were a lot of negatives. There was a couple congratulations, sound good, but that was like...
Was there a lot of middle bits?
Yeah, there was a lot of little bits. You're
working late?
Or like...
We need you down here.
It's just like saying things that'll happen. But there was a lot of
What the hell is going on? What did you think that this stunt of yours would accomplish?
Shit like that. So I don't know.
There's a lot of... That's a good one.
There was just like absence of mega positivity in this episode. Oh shit, my bag just fell. Sorry.
That absence of what'd you say? Absence of mega positivity?
Of mega positivity? No, of positivity.
You're really providing a great value to our listeners because you've already demonstrated that mirroring with the both Archer and A.G. Robinson repeating some phrases. And this here is a very interesting way to analyze an episode that I had never considered before.
Is how many positive words are used?
You're slightly blowing my mind here, and I respect and understand that there appears to be a tremendous amount of subjectivity into this system, but conceptually, quite seriously, I'm finding it really fascinating to think about like mapping an episode into some sort of grid of positivity, like on an axis of positive to negative positivity.
Well, think about the DS9 episode we did last week, Explorers, which was a sort of a motivating.
Did that have lots
episode.
of positivity?
Yeah, it did. Like,
That was really beautiful, Chief.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
It's wonderful.
Good. It's good.
Good point.
That's a good question.
well, then it starts to get more
Well,
neutral. But
but now I'm getting your vibe.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I was not aware of this.
All right.
yeah, there's a lot of like
This organizing principle you had.
Yeah, so
I
like
knew about like the brown, the colors. You have like brown and blue or some
brown
shit.
means it's powerful or interesting. But like, there's a lot of like,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Sure.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay.
Sure.
you see how
So
many?
that was last week, Deep Space Nine's Explorers.
Yeah, there was a lot of confirmation words like yes, absolutely. In this one, there was basically there wasn't a yes anywhere. There was a
I agree.
there was a
That's right.
there was a
It appears so.
and like I might be missing one or two, but that's about like as far confirmation words like yes, absolutely, of course. There weren't even any word like there was more of them last week, and they were more positive. These ones like I agree. He even says it kind of like.
Do you think you
depressingly.
could develop an algorithm to go through analyze scripts and then create a sort of a unified score or way to graph
positivity
this?
score?
This is a publishable study, is what I'm saying. I'm saying we could go through Star Trek and
publish how many.
Yeah. First you publish the method of condensing this positivity knowledge spectrum into an actual score of some sort. And then a future paper, we can use that methodology to then compare and analyze whether there's a relationship between the
Right.
spread of positivity versus, say, the rating of the episode.
So like it would be like analyzing an episode's tone based upon positive vernacular or something like that on the qualifying vernacular, something fancy words. I gotta say vernacular in there though.
Can we get a sound clip of you saying like qualifying vernacular?
We gotta isolate qualifying vernacular.
All right, this is silly.
But yeah, that's actually. But then I'd have to like rate each fucking like.
Well, that's why I was saying you got to
that's
automate that process. You got to figure out a way to automate that, and then that also makes it more objective and consistent.
And then it's hard to take into account like this,
I agree.
which he says I agree. I guess it just wouldn't take into that angle, but he sounds a little. He's not too excited about it. That would be that would be version 2 would somehow incorporate that.
Well, we could hire a team of graduate research assistants to pour through all that.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. We'll have inter-rater scales and all that other good stuff.
the inter-rater, refrigerator rater. Remember that? The refrigerator rater.
No, I do remember the operator of my pocket calculator.
Oh, well, no, I was talking about a commercial. You're talking about a Kraftwerk song.
Indeed.
Kraftwerk.
And what we
Kraftwerk. Not Kraftwerk. It's Kraftwerk. It's like I'm just making a callback for last week. I call him Kraftwerk.
What we ought to be talking about is First Flight.
You can't let him do this.
And I thought in my notes, I say first we must note. No, not first. We're 20 minutes into the episode. We must note what a strong response we got to our announcement that we were doing this episode. Right?
Oh, did we?
There's always people saying like, "Oh, I like that episode," or "That's good."
You're gonna have your hands full.
Tons of people responded on social media. Here's just a
Tons. Were there really tons?
No, there were really tons. This is just a sampling, and there was more. So on Blue Sky,
Maybe I just got lucky.
Lower Decker Astra said, literally the best episode of Enterprise. I will die on this hill. I don't think you need to die on the hill.
Still can't believe it.
It's a very good episode of Enterprise. Melanie on Blue Sky says, one of the very best of Enterprise with a blue heart. Maggie Spielman on Facebook, love this episode. James Philip Oliver on Facebook, one of the greatest episodes on Enterprise by far. Keith Carradine was excellent in this at the end when he says, good luck, John. Lerv that bit. Then says, see you out there. Nearly made me cry. Excellent scene. I agree. Isn't this the one where we find out United Earth punishes acts of treason by grounding someone from flying for several months?
3 months.
Okay.
3 months.
All right.
I actually made that note, which is like, because he was even like, at the end, he was even like, oh, we got grounded for 3 months. It's like, you should be fucking thanking your stars.
Yeah.
It was 3 months.
Okay. So Robert Zando mentioned that. I think is a little extreme to call it treason. I don't think they it's not
They
even-
lied to
it's-
Starfleet and they stole a ship. Maybe treason's the wrong word.
Look. Very specific point I'm making is a very narrow point in which I disagree with Robert Zando here is in the selection of the term treason. It's not just extreme to say treason. It is simply incorrect. They were not waging war against Starfleet or Earth, right? This is another classic Star Trek story where people do not get punished the way you would expect them to get punished for doing some crazy shit.
Right.
And we can talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But anyway, I just, I found it really interesting that so many people were really invested in this.
I had no idea that people love this episode.
Yeah.
This is sort of a tangent, but I was reading. Apparently, like a lot of people are of the opinion that the character of T'Pol ruined the show, and I like.
Wait, who are these people?
I don't know, but I don't. And I just, I was.
Where are you hanging out on the internet
I
these
must
days,
have taken.
Dan?
I must have taken a wrong turn at Albuquerque because, like, I found this path that started talking about why people thought T'Pol ruined the show, and I was like, I don't.
Was this like old, like Usenet conversations?
No, this was on the. I think this was people looking back. I mean, I guess I can see if I can find it now.
T'Pol rules.
The T'Pol rules.
I mean, I think T'Pol rules.
I do too. I really like her.
And this episode is a wonderful T'Pol episode because it's still early in the show. I mean, halfway through, of course, curtailed too early, of course. But where she's showing the Vulcan way of demonstrating your feelings for somebody.
I don't, and like an immediate search doesn't come up with anything. What I mostly get, I wrote, did T'Pol ruin Star Trek Enterprise? And what I'm mostly getting is the way they treated T'Pol was shitty. Is what I'm mostly getting.
That's good.
Yeah, no, that's true. But like, I swear, I found some. I stumbled upon it. I wasn't even looking for it, but I stumbled upon someone talking about why T'Pol was like a bad character or something. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah. No,
maybe it was just Rick Berman's treatment of her, like came through the screen or something.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I've definitely read stuff like that in the past, but I've never noticed it to be the prevailing view. I think most people are big fans of T'Pol. Although Enterprise
That's
in
why
general,
I'm so surprised.
it's one of those shows where it's been reevaluated repeatedly over time. Generally with increasingly more positive viewpoints. We've talked at length in previous discussions of Enterprise that it does have some sort of weird hangovers from the 90s, the Berman era stuff, plus some early 2000s. There's a little bit of weirdness in the culture, particularly U.S. culture at the time.
I gotta at some other time find what I was reading because everything I'm reading now about her is positive, but I know I read it.
Maybe you're gaslighting yourself.
Maybe.
Maybe you had
I'm so surprised because I liked T'Pol.
Well, anyway,
she does the Vulcan thing right.
Yeah, this is a fun episode. I really do like this episode. I'm not sure if I'd place it as my favorite ever Star Trek episode, but I think it's a really well.
I mean, Enterprise specifically.
Yeah, Enterprise. Yeah. Specifically Enterprise. It's a very well written, very well structured show, and I think they did a really good job getting Keith Carradine.
I was trying to remember where I recognized him from. Now I know he's brother of David Carradine, and he's been in a lot of things. But
and of Robert Carradine. Keith Carradine is the full brother of Robert Carradine, who's the guy from Revenge of the Nerds.
Okay.
And he's the half brother of David Carradine from Kung Fu and Kill Bill.
Okay, and I think what I specifically remember of him, because I have a vivid memory of him, and I couldn't figure out what it was from. I think it was when I was watching Dexter, because he was in Dexter.
He was in Dexter.
He was the Special Agent Frank Lundy, and I think that's where I'm remembering him mostly. But I know he's been in a ton of shit.
He's been in tons of stuff. In fact, he was in Nashville, the movie, not the city. He was in McCabe and Mrs. Miller. I think that was the first thing he ever did as an acting job, as he was like a cowboy or something. He was in that movie 2 Days in the Valley. Do you remember that movie with James Spader?
No, I never saw. Is that a comedy or something?
It was one of those movies that came out in reaction to Pulp Fiction.
One of those movies.
And a lot of them were not very good, but that was one of the ones that I think was, it wasn't Pulp Fiction, but...
Doesn't really matter now.
Keith Carradine, I noticed he was on one episode of Arliss.
Wow.
Did you ever watch Arliss?
No, I remember knowing it existed. It's one of those shows I never had any interest in looking into.
And he was on Fargo. I probably most remember Keith Carradine in terms of recent roles is from Fargo. He was really good on Fargo. But getting Keith Carradine really helps. I was like, what's going to happen with this clip? Okay, we're gonna go to break in a second, but I just wanted to mention
E.G. Robinson.
that I thought that they were smart to get Keith Carradine because he was able to pull off the as good or better than Archer vibe, which I think is hard to do with a guest character who comes onto a show with, and you have your hero and you have to be like, instantly be like, okay, I buy that this new guest person that we're just learning about is as cool or cooler than our main character.
You still don't understand.
He's got such a good voice.
Yes, exactly. It's his voice. It's his presence. Right. You buy into this relationship immediately. And I
Doesn't really matter now.
I find it very impressive. Do you find it impressive, Dan?
Consolation prize.
All right.
Your father designed a lousy engine.
Like a lousy engine.
Well,
Your father designed a lousy engine.
What about this?
This ship can fly. This ship can fly.
What does that sound like he's saying?
This ship can fly.
It's the same thing last week
Yeah,
with,
I know.
with the fucking Cisco.
Cisco, right. Oh, what was it I said? What was it? He says it was some kind of Cisco-y thing. It was like, was it ship?
We're going to make we're going to ship out.
The ship will be ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. I was doing some movement and it fucked it up.
This ship can fly.
Those
Whoops.
bugs just scattered your ship across 5,000
Wrong one.
kilometers of space.
Okay, this.
This ship can fly.
The ship will be ready to go in another week.
This ship can fly.
The ship will be ready to go in another
Which
week.
sounds more like shit.
Okay. Yeah. I think we got
Does
it.
this sound like shit?
This ship can fly.
Or this?
The ship will be ready to go in another week.
I mean, it's one of those things where when you say it, then I hear it. But like,
I was just saying, well, I was wondering which one sounded more like shit.
They both do because you primed us to think that.
It's just a crazy idea.
All right. Okay. You played a clip earlier of Robinson insulting Archer's dad, Henry Archer. We're going to talk about what happened after
Lousy
that
engine.
when we get back from the break. We will be right back.
Come with us, Lieutenant.
Don't wait for me.
Dismissed.
Like, oh my God, what the fuck? That was in your mouth?
All right. Are you good to go?
It'd be so gross.
Should we start the podcast again?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. We're back.
What the hell are we waiting for?
Maintain your orbit.
We were waiting to stop laughing from our conversation during the break.
And you'll never know what it is.
Titter, titter, titter.
Titter, 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 totter, tutor, maneuter, tutor, maneuver.
That's enough!
Okay.
All right. So,
I'm not done, Commander.
getting back to the topic at hand.
They are looking for a dark matter nebula and
oh, get ready.
and they would be first to directly observe one. It's hard to directly observe dark matter nebula.
Yes, good.
Now, and to Paul was there something you wanted to say?
Well, I mean, when we went to break, I said I implied that we were going to talk about when Archer and A.G. Robinson got in a fight.
Oh, we're not on that. Okay.
Well, just because you played that clip.
Okay,
but
yeah. No.
See, this is what happens when Jesse's not here.
I know.
It's all discombobulated.
It's all discombobulated. Well, then what if I...
play the clip of A.G. Robinson insulting Henry Archer, his engine, insulting his shitty-ass engine.
His shitty-ass...
Lousy engine.
That one?
Yes.
Your father designed a lousy engine.
And then... See, now I did not ask Dan to record the fight sounds because I knew he would.
Oh yeah! Oh man, that's crazy!
Yeah.
Oh yeah!
Oh no!
Oh yeah!
Yeah, your dad's engine sucks.
Yeah, I like that fight scene because they did the thing where, like, you knew they knew how to fight for real because they squared off. They rolled around for a bit and then they squared off and put up their dukes.
And then it got ugly. Enterprise.
I love it when they show military people all fighting because they get their fists up all
they
square.
pull their uniforms back.
Yeah, and
it
it looks all old school, and they're like, "I'm fighting like a real person. I'm boxing you."
Enterprise has a tradition of good fight choreography.
This is like a classic fist fight.
And the thing is it's a lot of it's Bakula, but again, here it's Bakula and Carradine both clearly know they've been in a scuffle. They know what they're doing. Maybe not. I'm not going to say they know what they're doing. They know how to make it look like they know what they're doing. When Bakula fights, he looks like he hurts people and he looks like he gets hurt.
Yeah.
And usually the setup with the Archer is that both things happen to him. Sometimes he's like punching some guy he's tied to a chair.
You can't let him do this.
In the face, which is not very Starfleet. Other times people are just kicking the shit out of him for some reason. I like the TOS silly fights. Those are kind of awesome.
Because those look like
Those are art.
They look at like excessively like something you'd learn in stage combat class, like in middle school.
It is commedia dell'arte. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense.
That was like not presumptuous, pretentious. My words are here not.
Pretentious. Moi.
What was it? You said it's not a kamabadu wabu.
No. I said it's a commedia dell'arte, which is the miming and stuff like that.
Commedia dell'arte.
Yeah, it's
That's enough!
it's a nice art that you have a plan and you make it a comedy. What I mean to say is the TOS
I'm gonna hold you to that.
The TOS stuff does not look realistic, but they're not even necessarily trying to make it look realistic. That's TV fun fighting.
Fun fighting.
And I'm not going to analyze all the shows. TNG, depended on the context, but it was still kind of, goofy TV style stuff. I just think like Bakula knew how to do a fight. Mm-hmm. And Enterprise knew how to, I don't know if they had just different choreographers or what. It always just felt like actual people scrapping.
I can't remember the last time. Have they ever done sort of the double fist hammer punch thing that Star Trek is known for?
On Enterprise?
The weakest possible punch you could give someone?
I don't know about on Enterprise.
See, that's what I think is
we've seen it on lower decks. We've seen it on TOS.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like
Riker
it's such an unrealistic move to try to pull off. And so it would make sense if Enterprise didn't have them do that.
Well, and Enterprise was purposefully more grounded in a lot of ways. I mean, that was the uniforms are more grounded. They wear baseball caps. Admiral/Commodore Forrest has a tie.
Their uniforms are so much better. They look like proper,
very utilitarian.
Yeah, they're nice and baggy.
Jumpsuits.
You can jumpsuits. You can breathe them. I want to wear jumpsuits.
I don't want to wear pockets.
Yeah, I don't want to wear those fucking tight.
I like all that Velcro
things.
pocket shit where you can just be like, I got all my shit on me.
Yeah,
it's spread around.
Yeah,
not like in my one fucking pocket. I got to spread it around my body.
I can picture them like trolling around on some dirty planet wearing those, but it's harder for me to imagine like Chakotay wearing like some Starfleet uniform with some nice black shoes, like tromping through some mountainside. It just doesn't. I don't buy it as much.
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically of a Voyager episode where I remember in my head seeing Chakotay on some like dirt planet, and he was like, he looked out of place.
Was that Tattoo?
Yeah, maybe. It might have been.
I don't know. It was just one of the more recent.
It could have been
Chakotay-centric stories that we've seen.
Consolation prize.
Anyway, that's the fight I wanted to talk about.
And it took Ruby. She let that go on for a good long time before she was like,
That's enough!
Well, Ruby, the only person who works at this place.
Yeah.
What was it? The 620 Club?
Oh yeah, the 60-40? 6 and 5/8 club.
Which I believe they've mentioned. I think Lower Decks has mentioned it, and I'm trying to remember. Was it Discovery? I'm pretty sure someplace else. Or Strange New Worlds. Maybe Captain Pike. The 602 Club, by the way.
602.
Yeah. I love the concept. I love the idea. And the 602 Club. They've done it. They've gone to that well a couple times. The only problem I have with the 602 Club is the concept of an officer's bar, an officer's club for Starfleet. Great idea. The execution is that this is like the corner of a Starbucks that's inside of a Barnes & Noble bookstore.
Not big enough?
It's not big enough. And it's not even not big enough. It's like, there's not that many people there.
I mean, even like 10 Forward was big, and that wasn't even particularly big when I think about like a cafeteria in my school or something like that, Yeah. Like you'd think like they'd have some kind of big ass cafeteria.
10 Forward was rocking.
That was a pretty cool place. That was chill. But yeah, it wasn't really that big.
I mean, this is in San Francisco, presumably near Starfleet headquarters.
How long before Archer got assigned does this take place? This was pretty close to when he got assigned, wasn't it?
Well, he talks about a year of delay and then 5 years. And, when you add it all up, I'm sure this is 7 or 8 years later, probably. Okay. Which it can't be too far because Archer does not look a day younger. It didn't look like they made any effort to make him look younger.
No, they didn't. I noticed that they didn't.
Even the uniform wasn't at all different. They changed his pips, right? Because he's a commander at this stage. He's not a captain.
They'll never give us clearance.
Oh, was that didn't really make sense with
because you said gave him his pips, and that means he got his clearance.
I mean, I don't think that's necessary.
I mean, look, man, like I'm not going to get everything perfectly in context. I'm working with the limited arsenal here.
It wasn't really meant as a critique. It was more of I was a little thrown off. I was a little confused.
It wasn't An easy decision.
Okay, there you go. See that one?
Have a little faith, T'Pol.
Perfect. All right, how about
Maybe
this?
I just got lucky.
You want to get back to that old nebula business that you were talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Because I have in my notes here, should put on a hell of a show, and then my note says, foreshadow much, Trip? It's like Chekhov's fucking nebula.
Chekhov's nebula?
You know Chekhov's gun. I know it's confusing when in the context of Star Trek, but in the literary, the playwright's context, Chekhov's gun. The dictum that says if you show a gun in the first act of the play, you must fire the gun in the third act. This is Chekhov's nebula.
I was thinking Chekhov as in Star Trek.
I understand it, and anytime you bring up Chekhov's gun in the context of Star Trek, which is frequent because Star Trek is often well written and well structured, and so they have lots of Chekhov's guns. Except in the case of Star Trek, it makes you think of Chekhov from TOS.
If I can, it should put on a hell of a show.
Yeah. Do you often write little like clever quips to yourself in your notes?
Do you mean like foreshadow much, Trip?
Yeah, that.
Like with the comma, foreshadow much, comma, Trip, question mark?
Now, do you not do it that often and you only did it this time and because it was so clever you felt you had to share it with us, or do you have a lot more that you don't share? Like that you like, do you do this often where you'll make something really clever that you'll keep to yourself?
No, I don't think I usually keep it to myself.
Okay, so you don't write that many clever quips to yourself when you take
I would have to start paying attention.
All the more reason to bring your engineer along.
No.
How did that work? Did that fit?
I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure.
Doesn't really matter now.
Okay.
Nebula. Dark matter. Proven a point to
Dark
T'Pol.
matter.
T'Pol, one of the
T'Pol is a T'Pol.
One of the functions of T'Pol on Enterprise was to be wrong.
Yeah, well, so right, so okay,
which to be fair is not a great look retrospectively to be like your job is to be a wrong foreign woman.
So they were saying that they were. It would be the first to directly observe one, right? And then Archer says, even your scientists have confirmed the existence of dark matter, to which I was confused because he says that if, like, Vulcans were hesitant to confirm the existence of dark matter. Now, I know that Vulcans take a long time to do shit.
It was oddly phrased.
Yeah,
oddly phrased.
Right, because even though Vulcans take a long time to do shit, you'd think if they had warp travel, they would have confirmed something like that already, if that was something that they could confirm. Like, I don't understand.
More likely to anyway, because they can go fly out and check it out.
Yeah, right. So I don't that was confusing the way he says even your whatever. But T'Pol, being usual T'Pol, is like skeptical, like gonna poo-poo every single fucking thing. She had three times where she was fucking just being a total negative Nancy about the whole thing.
Right.
It was this one.
Could be a phantom reading. The readings could be misleading. It's probably nothing more than a simple malfunction.
In context, T'Pol says it could be a phantom reading, and then Archer goes, even your scientists have confirmed the existence of dark matter. That was the first one. Second one, she goes, particle density is increasing. Archer says, we should be entering the nebula. Then she says,
the readings could be misleading.
And then the third one, he goes, we must be getting close. Trip said the dark matter might affect the shuttle system. He'll be happy to hear he was right, to which she goes,
it's probably nothing more than a simple malfunction.
Why is she shitting everything down? Like he
she's
says,
the Dana Scully of this television show.
But Trip said dark matter might affect the shuttle systems, and she just assumes it's nothing more than a malfunction. She wasn't even saying like, well, it could be a malfunction. She says it's probably nothing more than a malfunction. It's basically like, I don't know, if you walked up to me and you had like this delicious looking sandwich and it smelled really good, and I was just like, probably tastes like shit though, like all the indications tell me that it's a good sandwich, but I'm just gonna be like, it probably tastes like shit. So maybe she was just trying to bum Archer out. She's trying to ruin a sandwich. That's what she was doing, right?
Could be a phantom reading. The readings could be misleading.
They could be.
You think that's what the writers intended in this case?
That she was shitting on a sandwich?
She was shitting on Archer's sandwich.
That's what she was doing.
I like that as a phrase, by the way. That's a good phrase.
She was shitting on a sandwich.
Nah, I mean, you're right. It's
But yeah, that was a rule.
I mean, you were mentioning earlier about talking about how some people don't like T'Pol. I always loved T'Pol, but
I did too.
But it is true that sometimes T'Pol is the downer. She's the party pooper. Usually she learns by the end, and she doesn't give anybody much credit for being right.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is fair, because a lot of times Archer's like, I'm just going off of instinct. The way the story is framed, we're supposed to be like, that's cool, he's going off of instinct. But in real life, you're like, well, let's talk about this. Let's see, let's debate whether that makes sense or not. And which brings up the broader question right?
the question.
The broader question, and this kind of touches on the point made earlier about not being punished for a major violation, both Archer and Robinson.
And
Their punishment is rather slight, given that they stole an experimental ship and risked their lives. And
What did you think
a lot of
that
other
this stunt
stuff.
of yours would accomplish?
But they're rewarded because doing the stunt worked.
Yeah.
Right? It allowed everything. They allowed the program to continue, allowed them to humanity to assert themselves in front of the Vulcans. And it is a very American style story. And I know this not just attractive in America, but I tend to think of these as American stories, rightly or wrongly, of the iconoclast hero who goes against the grain and takes a big risk because he believes he's right. And it turns out that as long as he is right, he's rewarded.
Right.
For it.
Yeah, I know. There's that whole thing is I know that one always bugs me. It's like
It's a little weird.
It's whenever because this is not the first time this has happened in any kind of story, but like it's true. Like when it's like we better succeed because if we succeed, then they'll forget all the bullshit
and it's
we did
common
to
in
get up
Star
there.
Trek.
And it's like but we have that attitude like when we watch like football. You know, it's like it doesn't matter as long as they got the W. You know, they got that W.
Well, and that's the thing is that a cultural trait
Because-
we want to be reinforcing and or exporting?
Because I mean, they say so many times, and it's true. Like how a coach will make some crazy, ridiculous call, and if it fails, they're like, "What a stupid coach! Fire his ass!" But if it succeeds, they're like, "Brilliant! The guy's a genius!" You know, and it's all predicated on whether or not it worked.
Yeah.
And that would be one thing if it was purely by merit 100% of the time, but different factors go into different situations.
Yeah.
Sometimes people catch on to your shit, sometimes they don't. And there's factors that are out of your control. So it's like you can't completely discount the fact that like you want to make decisions that are statistically going to lead you to a better place versus the reward.
Well, and the other thing is there's two things at play in this story. One is the idea of being rewarded for taking risks, right? And as you say, maybe you'd want to be a little bit more informed about the risks you're taking. There's always a debate there. There's always some degree of subjectivity, even if you have a lot of statistics. But you'd like to have some sort of evidentiary support for understanding what options are available to you and which one or two or three are the most sensible options to take. Okay, that's one side of the story. But then there's the whole other disobeying orders thing, which is also rewarded.
This is really going to throw a wrench in my career plans.
Because it's one thing to convince others to take the risk, which is why, again, it's easier if you have evidence, but then to disobey orders and be like, okay, it's fine that you stole.
Evidence!
Thank you. It's fine that you stole the super expensive experimental thing.
Right. The NX1.
Well, in this case, the NX2.
Oh yeah, they stole the NX2, which was beta.
Well, not the NX2, the NX beta.
And it didn't even have ATS systems.
APUs, which are
it's APUs,
auxiliary processing units. They have those in like the Apollo.
Oh right, yeah, you're right. They didn't even have APUs. Because when they were doing the first NX ship, they were saying the WSP was nominal, the APUs were good, and they had variance on the RCS, which was the problem.
Yeah.
That variance, because they didn't know then...
Reaction control system, presumably.
And
that's what it means in spacecraft.
And they weren't sure if they got the stabilization problem ironed out. And that one didn't even have APUs. Okay, you're right. Not ATSs. I don't know where I came up with that one.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, you can think of it as an ATS if you like. We're not going to prescribe how you should think of things.
Speaking of words, wait, we're still making a previous point though, aren't we? About
Well, I think again, it was just about the whole disobeying orders, right? Because again, I'm trying to parse out how there's being rewarded for taking risks and there's being rewarded for disobeying orders as long as it worked out in the end. And those are two commonly linked stories that show up a lot in Star Trek. Kirk does it a bunch, but I think we see a lot of our captains. Cisco definitely does it. There's tons of episodes where Cisco is doing something where it's like, okay, in the end it works out because even though he did something terrible, it helped save the day.
In this episode, they were kind of a bad influence on each other because first AG was like, we can't do this. And he was like packing up his shit. He's like, this is fuck, whatever. And then Archer has to convince him. He's like, no, we're not giving up yet. And then AG's like, well, if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. We need to steal the fucking ship. And that's when Archer's like, well...
Star Trek 3 style.
And then that's when Archer's like, well, I don't know if we should do that. And then he's like, no, we got it. So it's like, at first he didn't want to do it. Archer convinced him. And then like, he told Archer what was involved. Archer didn't want to do it, and he convinced him. It's like they're bad. They're a bad combination. I guess you could argue a good combination, but like they're a dangerous combination because either of them alone would not have done it.
I think part of what makes the story work so well and why so many people place it highly among their lists of Enterprise episodes.
I'm not joking, Lee.
Is that these are two very real seeming characters. They are characters that feel like people you would have met in real life. And particularly in this scenario, these highly competent, highly competitive people fighting for glory and adventure. It's all that stuff, again, is stuff that's very common, certainly in U.S. culture and more broadly. And the ideas that A.G. Robinson passes on to Archer, I think are kind of interesting ones, where he's like, look, Archer, you're a total nerd about this piloting stuff. You're awesome at that. That's not what they're looking for.
Well, and actually, at one point, T'Pol even said, like, she's like, Archer's like, well, you don't believe my story about stealing a ship? She's like, no, I don't believe that you were hesitant to do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, you didn't know me back then.
Yeah.
So back then, he was like
more by the book.
Yeah, and so he got some of his shit from.
And I think there
Robinson.
may be some parallels there between Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin too.
Well, they brought up Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, but Buzz Aldrin
in not a very flattering light. I don't know if I was Buzz Aldrin and I like. Because they were like, what did Buzz Aldrin say? Nobody knows.
Yeah, well, what did Buzz Aldrin say when he stepped on the moon? I don't know. Of course you don't know.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, as Buzz Aldrin, if you were to hear that, wouldn't you just be like, kind of like, oh.
He might care, but a well-adjusted person wouldn't necessarily care. But where I think there are some parallels.
I mean, it's still, you might not ruin your day, but it might just be kind of like, meh, you hear that and you're just like, eh.
Maybe you'd like to think, you're right. Who knows? You'd like to think that the degree of training and the types of personalities, I mean, these guys were not all necessarily good guys, these astronauts, but that they might not care. In fact, they might not care because they're so arrogant that they don't care.
Did that sound at all interesting?
Yeah, it was a little bit interesting. Is it possible to mix that in with some other punches, or like, are those like?
Those are the only two punches I have.
From this episode, I guess.
Yeah, right? I mean, I guess I could find other ones from other episodes. But
do you have many punches in your library?
I might.
No, I'm not suggesting you look for them.
Yeah, it's possible. I try to copy certain sounds here and there.
Would you label it punch?
I would think, or I might say something like fighting or something. I don't know. It really depends. I might not have all that many. I'll tell you what I do have a lot of in this episode, and which they had a lot of. So therefore, I had a lot of.
I bet this is going to be an awesome segue.
What was the main problem they were having with their ship that Tucker said that he needed to adjust?
Oh, the intermix ratio or something.
It's going to take us a little time to get the intermix right. We just need more time to balance the intermix.
It looks like Tucker was right about the intermix.
I've routed the intermix controls to the engineering station. If it becomes unstable, you'll be able to adjust it manually.
Hope you and Tucker were right about that intermix.
I'm reading fluctuations in the intermix.
You better get that intermix locked down.
Intermix. That was the word of the episode. It's all about that intermix.
Sounds like a European cereal.
Yeah, it does kind of. Interme.
Would you like your daily serving of intermix?
Oh, and before the episode, I was trying to find some other word that Tucker was using often when he was referring to fixing ships, and I found what it was. This is another one he uses that I've heard him use throughout different episodes.
I've got some EPS conduits that might do the trick.
Always with the EPS conduits.
EPS conduits.
Always with the EPS conduits.
Well, there's the most famous thing that Trip says in this episode. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about...
I don't get it.
Yes.
I don't get it. You don't get it. I don't get it.
A common Trip phrase.
I don't get it.
He doesn't get it.
And a common one that I always enjoy when Dan plays one of the many Trip I don't get it clips.
You still don't understand.
I don't get it. I don't get it. You don't get it. I don't get it. Where would I stay?
I know. They keep giving Trip that line. I wonder if that's some kind of prejudice in there. It's like, oh, he's got a southern accent, so it's funny if he doesn't get it or something like that.
I guess it's just a catchphrase.
That's a terrible catchphrase to have. I don't want that catchphrase. Well, I mean, it's like I hop in the scene and go like, I don't get it.
Okay, well, to be fair, I hadn't quite considered it in that sense. Okay, speaking of Trip, we do in this episode, again, another reason to love it, is we get to see Archer and Trip first meet each other.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that engine.
Yeah.
There it is. That was the first chronological line we got from...
I love it. There's nothing wrong with that engine.
I'm on Captain Jeffries' engineering team.
I'm on Captain Jeffries' engineering team.
And you know, Captain Jeffries is a reference to Matt Jeffries, who was one of the production designers on TOS. And the Jeffries tubes are named after Matt Jeffries.
I don't get it.
No, okay, I'll explain it again. Matt Jeffries was an employee of Desilu Studios, I believe, and worked on Star Trek TOS, right? And then there's the Jeffries tubes. You're familiar with the Jeffries tubes in Star Trek, which is those little passageways, you know, like in TNG when they're crawling through there, and Geordi's all like in the Jeffries tubes, we're working on some stuff with the pad.
I don't get it.
Okay, let me back up. Just joking. I like that. I like that little Easter egg.
I still can't believe it.
Captain Jeffries. Enterprise was good at slipping in those Easter eggs because it was taking place so long ago. Taking place 2153 or
Tucker,
thereabouts.
sir. Tucker, sir. Charles Tucker, sir. Everybody calls me Trip.
Everybody calls me Trip.
Everybody calls me Trip.
And then
Everybody.
then he explains it.
There was, I have to criticize, I don't know who to blame for this. I don't know if I need to blame Connor Trenier or the sound engineer or the editor, but this.
You might want to check your sensors. You'll see we're holding steady at 2.5.
What?
2.5.
Is it
The weakest clap.
Oh, was that him clapping?
That was him clapping.
All right.
That was him clapping after they found out they won the episode. They win the episode, and that's his clap.
Can you demonstrate how you think it should be?
Whoops, that wasn't even good.
That's good. Just one clap. Here, I'm
trying to do it. It's hard, actually. Now that I'm. Yeah, there we go.
That was me.
They couldn't have at least laid over a fake clap over top of it or something.
But I mean, a lame clap. You're right.
It was more his was more like it was like that.
Yeah.
And it should be more it should be more like should be more like Mimo Mama Mimo. Mimo.
You want to try that again, Cotton Eye Joe?
Mimo Mama. It was sounding more like right? Sounding like that.
I'll tell you were about to sound like some lead belly.
and it should have sounded more like. You see?
All right.
My hands are starting to hurt.
Again, I really appreciate you bringing up something that I had not noticed, and it is an advantage of you pouring through the episode, listening with your audio ears instead of getting confused with your visual eyes, and you're getting at those things that we could not otherwise hear. This is the brilliance of the podcast format.
Then this is actually something I didn't foresee happening when I was pulling out sound is that, because I'm focusing on the sound, you start to notice patterns because you're pulling out things and then you have them isolated and then you're playing them back to back and eventually you sort of stumble upon patterns here and there. And it's not anything that I'm particularly perceptive. It's just the way you extract these and are forced to focus on something, like you just said, instead of visually as much. There's some interesting sort of emergent, qualities that you discover.
Okay. We're going to take a break. And when we get
I've got some EPS conduits that might do the trick.
And when we get back, we're going to talk more about patterns.
What?
And crystals. And what were you saying?
Crystals.
What were you talking about?
Geodes. Emergent qualities.
There you go. Emergent qualities. I was associating crystals with the emergent properties. Okay. We'll be right back.
Gotta go.
We've lost telemetry.
All right, we are back.
This is good timing, Admiral.
Would you like to join me?
You've been waiting all day to play that one.
All day? Well, I mean, I guess technically I've been waiting all day to do everything that I've been doing.
Fair point.
Technically speaking,
talking
least.
Talking about patterns.
Patterns all around you. Patterns everywhere. Something, something, something. Patterns seem unfair. Do you recognize the patterns that you find up in your mind? That's a Devo song.
Yeah, I hope we don't get a copyright strike because of how accurate your rendition.
I know.
Rendition
it was
of that
pretty
song
amazing.
was.
I'm sorry if my amazing singing brings down the podcast.
Especially when that was that last bit where you're like, As in terms of patterns, I was going to mention that similar to last week's Explorers, because last week, as we mentioned earlier, we discussed Deep Space Nine's Explorers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you may have been right.
There you go. Similar to that episode, this episode had people learning about themselves and each other.
Sherlock Holmes has nothing on you.
While riding in a small confined spaceship. Mm-hmm. Although this one actually had two, because it had T'Pol and Archer learning more about each other. And then Archer and Robinson when they were in the NX beta.
T'Pol was being real sweet this episode. She was all asking him about A.G. Robinson, and Archer's like, "You can read about him in your fucking bullshit." And he's like, "Oh, you want me to talk about it? Okay."
As I was trying to say, and I think I was being very inarticulate at the beginning of the podcast episode, but this episode has T'Pol really demonstrate her capacity for providing emotional support.
Yeah, you know that
in the Vulcan manner of doing it,
like suggesting they name it at the end to the Robinson Nebula. That was
literally had me tearing up.
That was great, and it was also
T'Pol had me tearing up,
and it was a good setup. How she was like, "We should name it," and he's like, "Well, just the T'Pol, blah 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 blah." He's like, "I was thinking of the Robinson." I was like, "Oh, that could have been really cheesy, but it worked really well."
And you know what's amazing about that line at the end?
No, I don't.
I'm going to tell you. Well, Dan,
I bet you're going to tell me.
I am indeed going to tell you what is so amazing.
I know where you stand on this, Commander.
So, this episode, written by professionals, has the foreshadowing, has the Chekhov's Nebula at the beginning when Trip Tucker says, if it works, it'll put on a hell of a show.
Yeah.
Tucker, sir.
So we know
Charles Tucker, sir. Everybody calls me Trip.
We know we're going to get the celebratory fireworks that are going to come after they succeed.
Those
in
purple,
the show,
those purple
right?
purple fractal fireworks.
Whatever happens in this episode, even though it's at the beginning of the episode, you know that it's going to be celebrated with fireworks, the space equivalent of fireworks at the end of the episode, because Trip has set that up. Okay. Mm-hmm. Point number one.
I'm not done, Commander.
Point number two, once you learn that Archer's friend is dead, you know that the nebula is going to be named after him. That's the only thing that makes sense from a literary perspective, right? That's the pattern right there, that's what's expected to happen. So we know at the beginning of the episode, we can guess that there's going to be a fireworks, the nebula, and the nebula will be named after Robinson. Okay. So when T'Pol says the line about why not name it after, Robinson, call it the Robinson Nebula. The fact that you know it's going to happen, that's what makes sense to happen, and it still catches you off guard to the point where you get that little teariness in your eye. You're like, oh my God, that's so sweet.
Your sinus.
T'Pol is so sweet.
Your sinuses get all weird.
Yeah, you get a little twitchy sinus.
Yeah.
Twitchy. Weird, whatever is there's those weird little growths inside your...
The cocculus?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Weird little nodules.
The cocculus.
Your synaptic nodules.
The tonsils? Tonsils?
No,
tonsils.
I don't know about the tonsils. But anyway, you're the tearing up.
Whoa, we both said
It is a credit to the character of T'Pol and to Jolene Blaylock. Really just so nicely done. And the arc over this story of her foisting herself on Archer because she recognized he was all fucked up. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I'm not letting you go alone. Not because of regulations, because she's like, you're all fucked up and I've got to unfuck you.
Yeah. And
she unfucks him throughout the course of this episode.
She does. And this is a flashback episode that doesn't feel contrived.
No.
It's like it totally weaves in perfectly. Because a lot of times the flashback episode, you only go back to the main part because you kind of have to every once in a while, but it's not usually like you're just kind of waiting to get back. But this one, like they worked really well.
There's meaningful character development as well as just entertainment from the performances of these characters interacting on their little shuttlecraft.
So he let T'Pol come along, but twice in this episode, in two different time periods, he denied Trip Tucker.
Yeah.
The
pattern.
There's a pattern.
Another pattern.
So the first one, they're on the ship. This is in the today timeline, the modern timeline, whatever. I don't even know what that means.
Contemporary?
Their contemporary timeline.
Yeah. Oh, contemporaneous.
Contemporaneous. Okay, thank
contemporaneous.
You. Tucker says, "You sure you don't want some company?" And Archer says, "If this nebula exists, we don't know what effect it could have on the shuttle pod." He goes, "All the more reason to bring your engineer along." He goes, "Not this time, Trip." And then
did he say it like HAL 9000? I'm sorry, Trip.
Not this time, Trip.
You can't go on the trip.
The second time
is that why he doesn't take him on the trip? Because his name's Trip?
Maybe. Maybe he thought it would be too confusing.
It would be. It's just a little confusing.
It's like, we're on a trip right now. What are you talking about, Captain? I'm right here and you're over there.
Oh, then the ship blows up.
I'm sorry, Captain? Captain? The second time was in the past when Tucker goes, he wants to come along on the NX, I think, or something.
Yeah, he wants to squeeze into the back of that two-seater.
And he goes, if I came along, I would monitor the antimatter flow. And Archer goes, I'll keep an eye on it. And Tucker says, you're going to have your hands full. And Archer says, we need you down here. Don't worry, you'll get out there someday. If I had my own ships, I'd sign. And then I ended it right there. Shit, why did I end it right there?
I don't know.
Why? Now I have to look it up.
Why did you say sign?
Because there was more to that sentence. The whole sentence is, if I had my own ship, I'd sign you up in a second.
Sign you up.
And I didn't copy the rest.
So that was a copy and paste error?
Yeah, that was my fault. But yeah, the point being is in both timelines, like Trip wanted to come along, and in both timelines, he didn't.
Another connection I hadn't made.
And you know what?
Really analyzed the fuck out of this episode, dude.
Well,
I'm impressed.
Well
done.
Thank you.
An observation, to say the least.
Which brings me to my next point, is that he should have, like, considering that A.G. Robinson just died climbing a mountain. First of all, that puts a little bit more perspective into Star Trek V. The fact that A.G. Robinson climbed the mountain. And then so he fell off and died. We saw Kirk climb up a mountain and he fell off and he came like within inches of dying. And that's back to what you were talking about, how like this idea, if you like are victorious, all sins are forgiven. This is kind of like, he didn't die, so it's funny, but if he did die, it's tragic, you know? And it's a game of inches right there. It's a game of inches.
A game of inches. Well, and then Archer in season 3, in Home, in fact, I think in the episode Home, he goes rock climbing. Mm-hmm. And now he's not. Oh right, he's not putting himself in as much danger as Kirk. But you know, it's still like there's a lot of this motif of him climbing mountains and in relation to other things in Star Trek.
So when Archer was saying he was telling Trip that he shouldn't come because he said if the nebula exists, we don't know what effect it could have on the shuttle pod. I guess saying like it's dangerous, right? Yeah. Well, if it's that dangerous,
potentially dangerous.
If it's that potentially dangerous that you don't want your engineer to come along, then why is the captain going along? Of course, that goes back to the age-old argument of Star Trek: is why does the captain do all this shit? But the problem here is that he used that logic to prevent Trip from coming. If they just don't talk about the fact that it's ridiculous captains are going on these away missions, it's fine. But the fact that he used it as an excuse as to why Trip shouldn't be coming didn't make any sense. Except if it's just that these guys, we're just supposed to like accept that these guys are all super macho and just like, do you think they're just all macho and they just want to be all like, you better jump off, you better let me jump off that cliff. That's an order, you know, that kind of shit.
I do know that kind of shit. I didn't read
Save
it
yourself,
that way.
That's an order.
I didn't read it that way. I read it as we understand his bullshit. Trip understands his bullshit. Everyone knows it's because Archer's like, I want to be alone because my friend died.
Yeah.
I want to be alone and grumpy. I'm taking this boring ass, stupid ass mission because I want to be alone.
I want to be alone.
I want to be alone. And it fits in with the backstory because in the flashbacks, Archer is talking about he really wants to explore. That's why he wants to advance the warp engine tests and was willing to sacrifice his chance of ever getting to fly at high warp again as long as he could prove that the system could keep going because he wanted to explore. So him taking this mission is both an opportunity for him to be alone and sad and grumpy, but also to be living the fulfillment of presumably the shared dream he and Robinson had of getting to the point where they could actually explore meaningfully in space, because even low warp was not sufficient to do that in a reasonable time frame.
Not this time, Trip.
Not this time.
Not this time.
Except
it was that time.
No, well, in the end, he didn't go alone, so.
Yeah.
Not this time, Trip.
Yeah.
But it's kind of ironic because he's telling Trip not this time, as in you're not coming this time. But actually, I was using it in the way that was saying Archer wanted to be alone, but
not this time, Trip.
He's not going to be alone this time.
He's not going to be
It's
alone
ironic the way I used it in juxtaposed with what it was meant in context of the episode. Excellent. In the context of the episode, he was telling Trip not this time, meaning you can't come, I have to be alone. But in actuality, not this time, he couldn't be alone, he had to be with T'Pol.
All right. I stopped paying attention halfway through there because I take it on faith that whatever you're saying makes perfect sense.
Don't you believe me?
I do. I mean, that's the issue. I do believe you. I do believe you.
Shall we try again?
All right.
Dan's
eager to make a point.
I'm gonna make a point, and I try to remember what the point was. I don't remember what the point I was gonna make. Yeah. I'm gonna make a point, but I don't remember what it is. I'm gonna make the point, and then I'm look at your butt, and then I'm gonna go home and sleep.
Okay. Did I let you dangle long enough?
Of course not.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea what I was going to fucking say.
Okay. So we can get to some bits and bobs then, because there's a lot of fun stuff. We've already touched on some of the things, like we mentioned the Captain Jeffries thing. I like the line where they were talking, and which one was it? Was it Robinson saying you won't be able to take the Vulcan with you?
I have the line. It says, when the first Warp 5 starship is built, its captain won't be able to call home every time he needs to make a decision. He won't be able to turn to the Vulcans unless he decides to take one with him.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you
exactly.
Go. That's exactamundo.
Very good.
Good.
I like that because it was a joke.
Congratulations.
It was a joke about T'Pol.
Yeah.
It was a T'Pol joke.
That was a T'Pol joke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a joke.
Yeah. Although Archer, sort of had to take T'Pol along with him.
I kind of sort of remember what I was saying.
Kind of sort of.
And it was in reference to the taking the ship into warp. So their only goal is to break the warp 2 barrier, which they did. Mm-hmm. But then they kept pushing it more. So that's the thing, is they didn't say they were trying to break the warp 2.5 barrier. Breaking the warp 2 barrier just means you hit warp 2.
That's why
it gets a little confusing.
It's a little confusing
because like the Vulcans are willing to dismantle the whole project, even though it succeeded. And the only thing that went wrong is the pilot didn't listen to orders, and so they were going to dismantle the whole thing. There wasn't anything wrong with the engine. I mean, yes, granted, an engine's not supposed to explode, but they were only supposed to hit warp 2. I thought it was also interesting that Ruby, at one point, she goes like, you guys are never going to get to Warp 5 if you keep fighting like this. So they're already thinking about Warp 5. Warp 5 is like the ultimate goal. That's their holy grail.
I think the idea is this because the Vulcans are around that, and
that's competition.
The Vulcans get up to maybe Warp 6 or 7 at this stage, but also the idea being that Warp 5 is sort of the minimum speed necessary to be truly spacefaring in a meaningful sense.
It's like you got to be able to go like 55, 60 miles an hour to make any kind of progress.
Right. Yeah, precisely. And so that's how I took that. I do find, it's a little confusing because I think we're just meant to assume like, yeah, of course, they're trying to go as fast as they can, as stably as they can. So they're going to keep trying. They're going to keep pushing. That was presumably Robinson's motivation to push the ship past its limits. What made it a little tricky is that they didn't really have enough time to fully flesh out exactly what was going on here, because we never really determined, was it pilot error on Robinson's part? Was it just the intermix stuff?
I'm reading fluctuations in the intermix.
Was it a combination? Was it all the personalities, attitudes?
Lousy engine.
I think you can kind of pick and choose from that menu. I kind of think it's like a lot of the focus is on the personalities, and once they got that in sync, then they were able to accomplish their goal.
They were both making excuses, because Robinson, I keep wanting to call him McKinley. Then I think about that guy, that actor McKinley, who was in Office Space. He played one of the Bobs.
Yes.
Something McKinley.
Yeah.
Gregor McKinley? No, not
yes, his name was Gregor McKinley. Hello, I'm Gregor McKinley.
But Robinson was basically trying to defend himself by saying it was a ship error, engine error. And then, but then Archer was saying, no, it's actually a pilot error. And so Robinson was basically trying to like make excuses for himself, and Archer was making excuses for his own father, his own dad. So. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was pretty. You can't really argue with the fact that he didn't listen to orders, even though he said you called him prematurely. That's not his decision to make. You know?
And that's the thing is
and apparently he didn't call him prematurely.
Again, because it all works out in the end. The episode is not giving us a super clear direction on how we're supposed to sort of take it. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
I was going to say that the effects in this episode, they're not exactly realistic, but they look cool. So there's the Metrionic missiles that blow up. And you were talking about there was like a fireworks display at the end there, and we basically got to see it in the form of a combination of those missiles and the nebula.
Yeah.
The missiles were these purpley fractal firework looking things that look silly, but they look cool. They're colorful.
And I like that it looked cool. Even though it was failed, it still looked cool.
Yeah.
Failing. It was like, ooh, is it going to work? Is it going to work? Oh, no, but it still looked cool.
Oh, wait, here's the music at the end when it was going to work and then it failed. And then afterwards it works, but then we don't hear that part in this clip. But you can hear it in the music. It's getting hopeful. Hopeful. Oh, we're gonna do it.
Anything on sensors?
No, we didn't do it.
Oh,
But then
it gets all sad.
Yeah. Then afterwards they find out it did work, but then there was more dialogue there. So yeah, I like the music I like how the music goes along with it pretty well. Yeah. Most of Star Trek usually has some pretty solid music going with it. But yeah, and then we see the nebula all blow up. Then there was the NX, the first NX blowing into 3 pieces, like these 3 big pieces. It didn't exactly look like great, but I enjoyed looking at it.
And then the special effects in Enterprise have always been pretty impressive, and especially that sort of like early era CGI.
Yeah, maybe I'm just being too critical on the era, but like it didn't stand out as much as some shows, but like it still doesn't quite. I guess we're still back then in that era where you kind of have to suspend disbelief when you're looking at the CGI. A little bit,
but I think it's look, the early stuff like the Babylon 5 and stuff, there was some like janky stuff that was really like suspension of disbelief style special effects, but still fun. Enterprise is where they really were getting in that groove of it works in sci-fi. I think it worked in the sci-fi context. It wasn't quite good enough to do the other stuff, but the roller coaster launch thing looked all sci-fi cool.
That was actually the third thing I was going to mention was that awesome roller coaster thing to like make them go up in the air. But when I think about that and compare the episode of Voyager with Sarah Silverman when they go to the planet and they show like a news crew shot.
What do you mean they go to Earth?
What did I say?
The planet.
Oh. Well, it's a planet. Some might argue it's the planet as far as we're concerned.
This makes me suspicious that you are an off-worlder, Dan. Because you like keep referring to
It appears so.
Keep referring to Earth as the planet.
But there was in the episode there was like a news crew shot, the news camera shot of like some footage of what was the Voyager flying through the atmosphere.
No, that was awesome.
And the way they did it, I didn't have to suspend disbelief. I didn't have to pretend it looked like it was supposed to. Like they did a really good job. And actually, interestingly enough, I find that the show What We Do in the Shadows has a lot of those kinds of effects where they integrate well with the realistic environment because they make it just far enough back or just they don't make it like the way it focuses. It doesn't draw your eyes in such a way that you get to see all the imperfections. It's basically combining like CGI ability with like technique, like tasteful sort of.
Absolutely.
Like Jurassic Park had a very like tasteful way that they sort of
the original
Jurassic Park had a tasteful way they sort of mixed in the CGI with the animatronics to the shooting and the lighting that it all went together to create like this amazing visual experience.
Lord of the Rings, same deal.
Yeah. Although in the Lord of the Rings, the whole Hobbit thing, there were some of those perspective shots that I didn't even know were perspective shots. Like once when Frodo was sitting on the carriage with Gandalf, he's like sitting way forward, but you can't tell.
Perspective stuff.
Yeah, that one was really good. I didn't know that. But when they're doing the perspective of like Gandalf and the camera's looking down at the hobbits and the hobbits are looking up at Gandalf, I never really could like get immersed in that.
But still, the point is that it's a mixture of CGI and the big models and the other camera techniques.
You're a camera technique in bed.
But yes, Enterprise did a very good job even early on. It was the peak. Well,
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Okay, subjective, so maybe you don't say peak, but certainly the apex. How about that? Apex, marginally different meaning, nuanced different meaning than the peak from a subjective sense. I do think it was the apex of that era. From TNG through Enterprise, that chunk of continuous Star Trek, where similar sensibility, similar production design vibe going all the way through, but evolving throughout. I do think that Enterprise very clearly was the apex in terms of the quality, but still maintaining the similar aesthetic.
I agree.
I'm not joking, Lee.
I was looking at the T'Pol. I was talking about how T'Pol was being a negative Nancy.
Yeah.
There was she was like twice she said it could be a phantom reading. The readings could be misleading. It's probably just a malfunction. And then there's a bonus one where Archer goes, "Have a little faith, T'Pol," and she's like, "Even if you're right, it may be dangerous to proceed. Another surge could disable life support." Like, she's just the whole episode. I thought this delivery of this line was, I don't know why this delivery caught my attention. It's this one.
Even with modified sensors, there wouldn't be much to see.
It was like at the beginning of the episode, and something about it, it's like she's really like quiet, and it almost seems like she's like it's not like she's forgetting her lines, but it almost seems like she was sleepy or something. I don't know.
Play it again.
Even with modified sensors, there wouldn't be much to see.
I don't know what it was. The whole opening of that episode, they all felt sleepy to me for the first 30 seconons of the episode.
Do you think they recorded that after a week long filming late at night or something?
I wonder how often actors are either just exhausted or hungover on screen. And
certainly exhausted, I imagine, quite a bit.
Right.
It sounds like there's a lot of hurry up and wait, military style.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. I heard
being on call at a moment's notice.
God. That is,
and then doing 2 lines and then having to sit down.
The worst part
change the lights.
The worst part is being on call about it, where it's like you can't fully relax. I mean, I guess there's obviously harder things to deal with in the universe, but just saying that's not fun.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I've ever been on a movie set, but I know that feeling.
You can certainly imagine.
You know what? I can't say I know that.
All the attention on you, like the camera, the visual, the audio, everything.
I just said I know that feeling, and I can't truly say I know that feeling because I've never experienced. But I can try to imagine. So many people
you can empathize with that.
Well, so many people say I know what you're going through. I know how you're feeling. It's like you don't know how I'm feeling. You don't fucking know. Yeah. You may have had a similar thing happen to you, but you don't know the context of the rest of my life with all the other things that are intertwined in that whole snenario.
Yeah.
We all have our own thing, man. Don't tell me you know what I'm feeling. But you can say other things. You can say I bet this is rough, or when I've experienced this is how I felt, and that's a better way, because then you're sort of being like.
Or you can describe the plot to a sitcom that you saw that covered a similar angle.
A funny sitcom.
Yeah. But it's a special episode of the funny sitcom.
Bilana's on it.
It was like one of the special episodes of Blossom where she was going to have lose her virginity for the 5th time or something.
Yeah. I don't think that's how that works. All right.
We'll tell those people that.
Any other bits and bobs? What is it? Odds and ends that I usually say?
Yes, odds and ends.
Because we do need to give all the social media and talk about what we're going to talk about next week and stuff. But I bet there's some. Is there a duty or no duty? We haven't had a duty or no duty in a long time.
I think we had one recently. There just haven't been many lately. Because remember, we were doing a lot of Lower Decks, and I realized that they stopped using the word duty in Lower Decks because they were aware that I was calling them out on the mispronunciation.
Got back to Mike McMahon.
That when someone said duty instead of duty, I was calling them out. So they just didn't want to even try this season.
They're like, we don't want to be called out.
We don't want to risk it. We can't control the actors 100% of the time. We don't want to risk this. So we're just not going to do it.
Right.
But now we're back to non-newer episodes. So there was one duty or no duty.
All right.
You are both suspended from duty, pending an inquiry.
Oh, that's interesting.
Suspended from duty. Suspended from duty.
I think I know what you're going to say. I think I got to lean just barely, but I got to lean towards it's a no duty. Is that what it is?
Yeah, you always say no duty.
I think it's a duty. I hear the hard T, so I hear a duty. But it is a soft duty.
Mm-hmm.
Duty.
It's a soft duty. Oh God, we're yucky. I of course say I believe it's 100% duty.
Suspended from duty.
That's duty.
Play it again.
Suspended from duty.
I don't know.
You are both suspended from duty.
I hear the
pending an inquiry.
I hear the T.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Too bad we don't have someone to break the tie.
That's right. Jesse ain't here.
He always takes your side anyway, though.
No, he always takes your side.
Okay, and there's one that's in order in this episode.
Oh, I was curious about that.
This is Forrest. Drop to impulse. That's an order.
I would have preferred if they said, "This is Forrest. I order you to drop to impulse." That's what they should have said. Not drop to impulse. That's an order, because he didn't even give the guy a chance to resist. Because normally you'd say like, hey, you got to do this. And the guy like doesn't do anything or the person doesn't do anything and they resist and they have to remind him, by the way, in case you forgot, that's an order. But he didn't even pause to allow the person to resist. He said, drop to impulse. That's an order. So in that case, he should have just said, I order you to drop to impulse. Straight, got to the point.
I can agree with that, or I can at least support that. I will say, to be fair to Commodore Forrest, that I could see him say he's in a hurry. He's giving the command, drop to impulse. That's the first thing he needs to do. He needs to get that information out. You need to drop to impulse. And then as almost a secondary thought, he's like, oh, they stole a ship. I have to add, that's an order. Like add it to emphasize. I'm just now realizing that I have to add that because these motherfuckers stole this ship. So I think there's justification for the sentence construction he gave. However, I don't disagree with you that for a variety of reasons, your phrasing may be better.
What did you think that this stunt of yours would accomplish?
Well, what I thought was that was a very good episode.
I know where you stand on this, Commander.
Star Trek Enterprise, I thought it was a very good episode of Star Trek. I thought it was just a very good episode in general. Very nicely written, well performed. Keith Carradine's great. Scott Bakula's always great.
When they remember the point when the guys came in and tried to take Tucker away, those 3 officers.
Yeah.
They were like, come with us, Lieutenant.
But he was like, no.
Yes, they forcefully grabbed him like they were gonna fucking wrench him off into the brig or whatever. And then he was just like, no, hold up. He just like put his finger up. He's like, no, hold on, one second. And they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like they grabbed him like they were just gonna throw him across the room, but all he had to be was like put his finger up. Be like, hey, just give me a second here. And they even beforehand said like, come with us now, come with us now. Just hold on. It's like, okay.
I did notice that.
It's like it didn't match.
Yeah. All right. So
is there anything else?
Well, what else we have to mention is that next week we will be discussing the brand new, just dropped today as we're recording this, Star Trek Section 31.
What the hell is going on?
It's a streaming TV movie, TV in quotes, streaming TV movie. Dan and I haven't seen it yet. We're both very much looking forward to checking it out.
We're not going to get anywhere without taking some risks.
That's my thing. The tenor, the timbre of his voice.
It's because it's rolling around in his throat.
Yeah, it is.
We're not going to get anywhere without taking some risks.
All those words are just kind of like a ball of words, just kind of massaging around.
I know,
bulging out of his Adam's apple.
It's like a vibrating chair listening to it. You know, is it the tenor or the timbre?
Timbre or timbre?
Timbre or tenor?
There's the timbre and there's the timbre.
It's not the tenor. It's the timbre.
No, the tenor is the mid-range male.
Right, but
vocal.
Can't you say that something is timbrous?
Well, you can have a timorous person, but a timorous person is somebody who's like nervous.
The timbre,
like a timorous child, a child who has anxiety.
The tenor? No, I didn't say the tenor. Timbre. I said timbre.
Oh. Anyway.
Or no, what did I don't even remember what I said.
Well, you figure that out.
The tenor of his, it's not the tenor of his voice, it's the timbre
Well,
of his
I continue
voice.
to explain to the audience that next week we'll be talking about Section 31, the new Star Trek movie with Michelle Yeoh and a bunch of other people.
We're done flying.
It should be interesting.
No use hanging around.
The internet's all aflutter about it.
Well, I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet either, and I've been trying to avoid spoilers, so in fact, Dan and I both might go watch it right after we finish recording.
We both might go home. We might would go home.
We might would go home and watch that movie. But that's what we'll be discussing next week. With luck, Jesse will be joining us. If not, maybe we'll have a guest like Mr. Papers.
Don't wait for me.
We'll figure it out.
Mr. Papers. Are we going to snuggle for real next week if Jesse doesn't come?
If Jesse doesn't come, we'll snuggle for real. We'll make a big deal about it. And
From scratch.
We won't put it on our Patreon or nothing.
And one lucky SOB.
Speaking of, we do have a Patreon. If you're interested in checking that out, you can get free previews. Sign up, even if you for the unpaid tier. And if you want to pay a little bit, you can get a lot of bonus content. That's at patreon.com/itsgotstartrek.
As Dr. Phlox would say, optimism.
Optimism.
I don't have any quote of him saying optimism. I'm disappointed.
That's a failing. Yes. So, Patreon did that. Email feedback at discussstartrek.com. Website www.discussstartrek.com. Facebook, YouTube, all that.
This ship can fly.
Just search for It's Got Star Trek. You'll find us. All the.
We're both suspended from duty. Pending an inquiry.
Go to Blue Sky. We're having a lot of fun over on Bluesky, and don't slack on Mastodon. You know, we also
Don't sleep on Mastodon.
Well, don't sleep on it either. Just go interact with people on Mastodon, because the Mastodon's pretty awesome too. They've got a good community going on.
Yes.
You here?
Anyway, Section 31 next week. First flight was this week, but that's done. We finished that. We'll talk
Anyone notice we're gone yet?
We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Night, Ruby.
Was it a good show? How about Rosalie if it's a girl? Come on, give me a hint. She's had names for her kids picked out since she was 10. Says she'll marry the first man to guess him.
What's your name, Lieutenant?
Charles Tucker, sir. But everybody calls me Trip.
Trip.
My dad's Charles Tucker, and so is his dad. That makes me the third, so triple Trip.
Triples makes it safe. No, triples is best.